Welcome back to Scary Moo, where the shadows stretch long and the things that go bump in the night have stories to tell. Tonight, you're about to follow us into the heart of rural terror, into a place so cursed that even the bravest locals refuse to speak its name after dark. We spent the night in the world's most cursed barn, and to our horror, it whispered back. You know the kind of barn I'm talking about, the one that sags at the edges of a forgotten field, its roof buckled under the weight of untold secrets. The kind of barn where the wind never quite sounds right, and the animals never linger too long. This isn't just another abandoned building. This is a place with a reputation so black that it's been erased from maps, its history scrubbed clean by generations desperate to forget. Let me take you back to where it began. Local legend says the land was poisoned long before the first boards were nailed together. In the 1800s, a family vanished here, father, mother, 3 children, swallowed whole by the night. The townsfolk found their livestock mutilated, the walls of the barn painted with symbols no one dared decipher. After that, the barn was rebuilt, again and again, but each owner met the same fate. Some disappeared, some went mad, some were found, their mouths frozen in silent screams. And through it all, the barn remained, watching, waiting, whispering. We heard the stories. We read the warnings scrawled on the internet forums. Never go in after sundown, never speak to the shadows, never answer if the barn calls your name. But horror isn't just about watching from a distance. Sometimes you have to step into the darkness and see if it blinks back. The night we arrived, the air was thick, heavy with the stench of rotting hay and something else, something sour and metallic. The barn loomed before us, its doors yawning open like a hungry mouth. We brought our equipment, recorders, EMF meters, and just enough bravado to drown out common sense. As we crossed the threshold, the wooden boards creaked underfoot, groaning as if waking from a long, uneasy sleep. Inside, the darkness was almost physical. Even our brightest torches seemed to smother in the murk. Spider webs hung like funeral veils, and in the silence, we could hear our own heartbeats, loud, frantic, and very much alive. But it wasn't silent for long. It started with the whispers. Faint at first, like the rustle of dry corn husks in a breeze. We tried to brush it off as wind, or maybe rats scurrying through the rafters. But the sound grew, a sibilant murmur, threading its way through the beams and into our ears. The words were impossible to make out, but the intent was clear. We were being watched, judged, welcomed. We set up camp in the center of the barn, spreading out sleeping bags on the dirt floor. As the hours dragged on, the temperature plummeted. Our breath curled in the air, and every snap and crackle of the wood made us flinch. We asked the usual questions, the ones that ghost hunters always ask. Is anyone here with us? What happened in this barn? Can you give us a sign? The barn gave us more than a sign. It gave us answers. At 1:13 a.m., something changed. The air crackled with static, and the whispers sharpened into words. Our names, spoken in voices that didn't belong to any of us. One by one, we heard ourselves called, each syllable stretched and twisted until it barely resembled the sound of a human tongue. It was as if the barn itself was trying out our identities, trying them on like masks. We huddled together, adrenaline spiking, every primal instinct screaming at us to run. But this is Scary Moo. We don't run from the dark. We document it. We interrogate it. We let it crawl under our skin and see what it leaves behind. That's when we noticed the marks. Scratched into the wooden beams, barely visible under layers of grime, symbols, circles, and crude faces, all carved with desperate, shaking hands. Some were fresh, the wood still splintered, as if someone, or something, had added them recently. One of us traced a finger over the deepest groove, and the barn seemed to sigh, a low, guttural note that vibrated in our bones. We asked again, "Who are you? What do you want?" The response was immediate and unmistakable. The hayloft above us groaned, and a rain of dust and debris drifted down. Then, a new voice, a child's voice, thin and pleading, whispered from the darkness, "Don't leave me here." That voice was wrong in every way. It was too close, too cold, and it echoed off the walls, bouncing back at us from impossible angles. We stared at each other, faces pale, eyes wide. None of us had spoken. None of us could have made that sound. We decided to split up, hoping to catch more of the activity. One of us climbed the ladder to the hayloft, flashlight trembling in a white-knuckled grip. The other stayed below, recording, waiting, listening to the barn's restless breathing. Upstairs, the air was colder, sharper. The dust swirled in unnatural patterns, as if disturbed by unseen hands. That's when the scratching started, slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging across bone. It came from the far corner, where the shadows were thickest. The beam of the flashlight caught something, a shape, hunched and shivering, pressed tight against the wall. We called out, but the only response was laughter, high, broken, bubbling up from the floorboards like swamp gas. The shape dissolved, melting into the dark. The scratching stopped. The whispers returned. Down below, the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Our breath came in panicked clouds. The barn doors, which we'd left ajar, slammed shut with a thunderous crash. We were locked in, trapped. The barn had made its choice. We regrouped, trying to keep our nerves from unraveling. We read aloud from old newspaper clippings, accounts of disappearances, reports of livestock found mutilated, rumors of rituals conducted in the dead of night. Each story seemed to feed the barn's hunger, the whispers growing bolder, more mocking with every word. Then, the shadows began to move. Not just the flicker of torchlight or the play of imagination. These shadows had weight, intention. They crawled along the walls, pooling in the corners, reaching out with fingers that left frostbite in their wake. One shadow in particular, tall, thin, crowned with horns of twisted wood, stood in the doorway, blocking out what little moonlight remained. We stared, frozen, as the figure tilted its head, regarding us with empty eye sockets. The whispers crescendoed, overlapping in a cacophony of voices, male, female, child, animal. Each one begging, threatening, promising release, promising torment. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, sucked back into the darkness. We tried to keep moving, to keep documenting, but the barn was closing in. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing in time with our own ragged gasps. The floorboards shifted, giving way beneath our feet. We stumbled across old relics, children's toys, rusted tools, a Bible with half the pages torn out. Each object radiated a cold, oily dread, as if handling them would mark us forever. At 3:07 a.m., the barn spoke again. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a roar, a guttural, inhuman bellow that rattled our teeth and sent us scrambling for cover. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the rafters, shaking dust from the beams. The words were unintelligible, but the meaning was clear. Get out. Leave, or join us. We tried to open the doors, but they wouldn't budge. The windows were fused shut, glass warped by decades of feverish heat and cold. We pounded, shouted, pleaded, but the barn only laughed, a deep, rattling sound that vibrated through the foundations. We were not leaving, not yet. With nowhere else to turn, we gathered in a circle, clinging to each other, reciting whatever prayers or curses came to mind. The barn grew silent, listening, considering. Then, the voices returned, soft, gentle, coaxing us to let go, to surrender, to become part of the story. Suddenly, the floor beneath us buckled, and we plunged into darkness. We landed in a crawl space, choked with dust and mold. The air was thick with the smell of blood and rot. We could hear movement in the shadows, skittering, whispering, the scrape of claws and the click of teeth. We crawled forward, desperate for an exit. The space was littered with bones, animal, human, impossible to say. Each skull grinned at us, hollow eyes promising secrets we didn't want to know. The whispers here were louder, clearer. They told stories of betrayal, of sacrifice, of hunger that could never be sated. We found a trapdoor, half rotted and slick with something viscous. With all our strength, we forced it open and climbed back into the main hall. The barn was different now, warped, swollen, breathing in and out like a living thing. The walls bled sap, thick and black. The symbols glowed, casting eerie light on faces that weren't our own. We knew then that we had overstayed our welcome. The barn was not just haunted, it was alive, and it wanted us. As dawn broke, the doors finally creaked open. We stumbled into the morning light, gasping, covered in bruises and scratches we couldn't explain. The whispers faded, but we knew they would return. The barn had tasted us. It would remember. We left that cursed place behind, but it followed us. In our dreams, we hear the voices, soft, insistent, promising that the next time we return, we won't leave at all. If you're ever tempted to visit the world's most cursed barn, remember this. It doesn't matter how brave you are. It doesn't matter how many cameras you bring, or how many friends you have at your side. The barn doesn't care about courage. It cares about hunger. It cares about stories. And it always gets what it wants. If you enjoyed this journey into darkness, if you want to hear more tales of haunted places and cursed things, don't forget to subscribe to Scary Moo. Leave a comment if you've ever encountered something that whispered back in the night. And remember, some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Sleep tight.